Live an optimal life through health and wellness. Be well, get well, and stay well.
It's great to see everybody, and wow, what a wonderful turnout. Holy cow. I appreciate everyone taking the time to learn, but I really want to talk more about your immune system. I think we know what it does, kind of, but I don't know that we really appreciate it. And then we'll kind of segue into really what we can do nutritionally to help support specifically immune cells. And then we'll get into kind of what each of the individual ingredients does. I am going to start a little bit scientifically, but I don't want to scare anybody off by starting with the science, because I think it's fun to tell scientific stories, but I promise you don't have to have a PhD or even be a scientist to talk about daily wellness. I think right now so many people are looking for ways to support their immune system, and this is just a wonderful way to do that. So what is daily wellness? Well, besides being one of the worst kept secrets at LifeVantage, we refer to it as a powdered drink mix. So it is very similar to Axio, although the ingredients are completely different. And very importantly, it's meant to be consumed daily to support not just overall health, but especially target our immune systems. So first, if you've ever seen me speak, I love definitions. But let's talk about what it is, how it works, and what we can do to support it. So here's my definitions. So technically speaking, our immune system is a coordinated system of cells, proteins, and chemical signals that are designed to keep us as healthy as possible. And what else we don't appreciate about our immune system is it doesn't just work on that first point, but our immune system does a whole bunch of other functions. It helps with cellular and tissue turnover and regeneration. Something else that the immune system is really integral in is something that's called the wound healing process, right? This just natural process that's occurring inside of our body. So think about if we were to cut our finger with maybe a knife as we're cooking dinner. So we get this small little cut on our finger, and it turns out there's a whole bunch of damaged cells and tissues there that need to be first removed before our skin cells can start growing and dividing. Well, who's really facilitating that cleanup is our immune system. So our immune system is playing a massive role in our overall health, but especially in our overall immune health. And I think as we think of it more traditionally, and that's where I'm going to focus most of the talk today. So technically speaking, and then forgive me, here's where we start to get a little bit scientific, and there is a little bit of jargon here, but there are three parts of our immune system. One is our innate immune system. And our innate immune system, in my mind, is really kind of this ancient immune system. It really works in a crude way, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. And then we have this more advanced system in our immune system, and that's what we call this adaptive, or another name for it is our acquired immunity. So think about maybe if you were a kid and you got chicken pox, right? They say you only get chicken pox once, and that's because this adaptive or acquired immunity kicks in, gets really specifics to that chicken pox, and then basically also has a memory for chicken pox. And so if we're exposed to it again, our immune system can jump on it, and it does what our immune system does. Oops, I hope you didn't see the answer first, but does anybody know what that third part of our immune system is?
Barrier system.
I wish I could see the chat. I'm sorry, it's closed when I'm on full screen, but it's our barrier system. And barrier system, again, is just a scientific way to basically say our skin. And we're not just talking about our skin on the outside of our hands or our feet, but we effectively have another layer of skin that lines the inside of our bodies, and that's in our digestive system. So those cells are very similar to our skin cells, and they're called what we call epithelial cells. And so we also want to support that barrier system, not just on our skin, but also in our gut. And if you think about it, this really is our primary defense against the outside world. I mean, if you think about it, we live in a really, really dirty place. And the more stuff we can keep outside, no matter what it is, the easier our internal systems are going to have. So it can actually be argued that our our barrier function, or this external facing immune system, is more important than maybe even some of the actual cells that we're going to try to support. So let's first talk about this barrier system, or the skin cells that line our outside and the insides of our bodies. And like I mentioned, it really is our primary defense. And so I like to maybe think of this as like the castle. So the better defenses we can build, maybe we build these big stone walls, or we put a moat around the castle. The more we can keep the invaders at bay, the easier it's going to be for the rest of our immune system to work. But more than that, our immune system also strategically lines various immune cells right below that skin layer, that if that barrier is breached, that it can act very, very quickly. So here, like I said, it's very scientific, but I'm not going to get into all the details here. But the point I want to make with this slide is you can see there's a whole bunch of different cells that make up our immune system. What is so interesting about our immune system is they all start from one single stem cell, and most of those tend to be inside of our bone marrow. Okay, so the stem cell has to make some decisions pretty early in life. What type of immune cell do I want to divide into? And so scientifically, this is known as a process of differentiation. So at certain points, we will want different members of our immune system to be around. We want to keep that population in a nice, healthy balance. So keep that in the back of your mind in this process of differentiation, because the ingredients in daily wellness also help facilitate that process. Another important point I want to make as we're talking about those two other components of our immune system, the innate and adaptive parts of our immune system, is we like to talk about them in very discrete ways, but in fact there's really overlap, and this all comes back to cellular signaling. So you can see there's a population of cells that overlap in this kind of pseudo Venn diagram, where there's some crosstalk that's going on between the two different parts of our immune system. So each part of these immune systems are talking to each other and help coordinating the functions that each one of these different cells needs to do. Now, to put it in really kind of crude mechanisms, remember I referred to innate immunity as being this really archaic part of our immune system. And that's because it's working in a really, really crude manner, okay? It's working in a very non-discrete manner. And this might seem like a very grandiose analogy, but you'll see why this makes more sense in a minute. But just like a nuclear bomb might go off, it's going to affect anything that's within a certain radius of that bomb going off. And our innate immune system is working in a very similar fashion. But if you oppose that to the adaptive immune system, this really is a really precise part of our immune system. There's so much precision and recognition that goes on with our adaptive immune system. This is really what gives us our elegance in our immune responses. So coming back to that definition of a coordinated system of cells, proteins, and chemical signals, right, that designed to keep us as healthy as possible, let's talk about some of these chemical signaling or cellular signaling that's going on in our immune system. So we see this type of chemical signaling throughout nature. I think we've all seen ants kind of following their trail to a food source. I have a degree in entomology, a degree that almost nobody in the world has or would care to have. But it's very interesting on how, let's say, a female moth or butterfly actually finds her mate. So she will go high up in a tree branch, flutter her wings just a little bit, and start to secrete pheromones. The male moth or butterfly is very uniquely equipped to pick up or sense these pheromones, and he kind of follows this trail back to the female, and then nature happens and they make little baby butterflies. Well, a very similar thing happens with our immune system. And something I always try to do when we're talking about science, and as best as I can, I like to make the invisible visible. So I doubt that any of us have ever seen what an actual immune response might look like. So here's kind of a simulated look at what an immune response might look like. So this is under a microscope. And what they've done is put a whole bunch of different immune cells on this microscope slide, and then they've dropped a little parasitic worm on there. Now, if you'll watch kind of in the middle and then at the bottom, you will see an immune cell that attaches, starts to emit signals, and it attracts the other immune cells to that first site. So here's what a little immune response looks like. So how cool is that? And then I've got even maybe a little better example here. So again, on a microscope slide, we have these really round and kind of dark circles. Those are just red blood cells. Here would be one of our white blood cells. And then they've dropped just a little clump of bacteria. I should point over here, but they've put a little bit of bacteria on this microscope slide, and they want to observe what this white blood cell does. So what you're going to see is basically this immune cell chasing this bacteria around the microscope slide. So the bacteria is moving just from kind of this water vibration that's happening on the microscope slide, but eventually this white blood cell is going to capture and engulf and then do what immune cells do. And then watch, it can even just completely change directions. And that's happening because that immune cell can literally smell these proteins and lipids that are on that bacteria. And then you'll see a whole bunch of fluttering over here. And then that's kind of what the immune cell does for that bacteria to ultimately meet its demise. So how cool is that? And like I said, this is simulated, but this is very analogous to what's actually happening inside of our bodies. So again, a bunch of complex chemistry. So I hope everyone paid attention in their high school chemistry classes. I'm kidding. I'm not going to actually go through this, but our immune cells have very unique biochemical pathways that create some very clever molecules that help immune cells do their job. And I'm going to highlight this lower left-hand corner, and I want to highlight a couple key molecules that you may or may not recognize. Maybe the first one I'll call out on here is one of our dear friends, SOD, if you can see that in the upper right-hand corner of the box, and that'll become important in a minute. Down at the very bottom, you have a compound that ends in SCN. And if anyone knows anything about chemistry, SCN basically is analogous for cyanide. If we go straight up from there, we have a compound called H2O2. Anybody know what that compound is?
Hydrogen peroxide.
Hydrogen peroxide. Michael, you're cheating. You've seen this presentation already. So it's hydrogen peroxide. And what do we put on our cuts, right? We'll put hydrogen peroxide on our cuts to help keep them clean. And then straight across to the left, we have a compound called HOCl. Anybody know what that might be? It's called hypochlorous acid scientifically, but it's also known as bleach. So what do we actually clean our surfaces with to keep them clean? We use bleach. So our immune cells have this capability to make these exact same compounds that we use in everyday life. And this is really how immune cells are doing their jobs. But remember how I talked about, especially our innate immune system, and I use that kind of nuclear explosion as an analogy. Well, a lot of these other compounds that are on here are very similar, if not the exact same compounds that are produced during a nuclear explosion. And the reason this all becomes important is because these molecules don't have specificity, okay? So not only are these compounds working on their targets, but they can also work back on the immune cells and they can also work back on our own cells and tissues. And maybe a good analogy of this that I can put out there is one that relates to exercise. There's this phenomenon that's called delayed onset muscle soreness, or DOMS. And so let me ask the question, are you more sore when you exercise the first day after you exercise or the second day?
Second day.
It's the second day. And the reason it's the second day is because of an immune response that occurs. So when we're exercising, we're making little microscopic tears in our muscle fibers. So really what we're doing is ripping open cells. And remember, our immune cells are literally equipped to smell different things. And so one thing they can smell is when our cells have been ruptured, because our immune system assumes the worst is happening. So as we're exercising and we're making these little microscopic tears in our muscle fibers, our immune system is mounting an attack, okay? Because it thinks there's a problem. So it sends the immune cells to that site where whatever muscles we use to exercise, and they start secreting these compounds. These compounds go on to further damage our muscle, and that's why we're more sore the second day than the first day, and why some of the ingredients in daily wellness ultimately become important. But maybe just to expand on that just a little bit further. Remember, I talked about how the immune system is also really important in tissue cleanup and repair. So our immune system is also helping clean up that damaged muscle tissue and helping with that regeneration so that we can build ourselves back stronger than we were before we exercised. Now, I think most of us know that really our immune system is controlled by really a light switch. It can be turned on and it can be turned off. And that is just a little bit simplistic. But really what we're talking about is a healthy, balanced immune response, because our immune system is always a little bit on and always a little bit off. And then we can tip that balance just one way or another as we need. So what we want to be talking about is maintaining this healthy, balanced immune response. And so to do that, coming back to those three parts of our immune system, we want to talk about supporting all three aspects of our immune system: that barrier function, right? The skin and the gut, that innate immune system, and that adaptive immune system. And so to do that, we want to support a healthy gut and skin. Because of that indiscriminate nature of especially our innate immune system, we also want to talk about antioxidant protection. So both for the immune cell and for the host cell. And that goes for both our nutrigenomic approaches with our products, but also some of these direct antioxidants. And we'll talk just a little bit more about that in a minute. And then, of course, we want to support immune cell growth. So we want to make sure they're as healthy as possible. And if you remember that process of differentiation, when that immune stem cell has to decide which cell it wants to become, that's also really important. And there's nutritional ways we can support that. We want to make sure our immune cells are working as actively and efficiently as possible. So now let's get into the ingredients, the 5 ingredients of daily wellness. I like to break them down into 2 parts. I like to break the first part into essential vitamins and minerals. And so the first is going to be vitamin C, and you will find vitamin C in there at 150 milligrams. So let's talk about why vitamin C is important for supporting our immune systems. So the first, I think, obviously, is antioxidant protection. I think most of us relate vitamin C to an antioxidant. And it turns out that certain populations of our immune system actually actively transport vitamin C into their cells so they can help protect themselves against those exact same nasty compounds that they're producing. And in fact, see if I can do a little math off the top of my head really quick. But the concentration of vitamin C inside of some of these immune cells will be somewhere between 100 to 1,000 times higher inside of these immune cells than we'll actually find circulating in our blood. So they very actively want to accumulate, especially vitamin C. But while we tend to think of vitamin C as an antioxidant, it is also an essential nutrient, and it plays a number of roles, especially as it relates to our immune system. So a couple of things that vitamin C is important for is cell division. So vitamin C helps trigger a process that helps our immune cells divide. But it's also helping with that decision-making process of what type of immune cell should I become. And then through its essential role in collagen formation, and if you're not familiar with what collagen is really the glue that holds many, many of our cells together. And maybe a simple analogy that I like is if you can imagine looking at maybe a brick wall. The bricks would be like our cells, and then the mortar that's holding those all together would be like this collagen. So collagen is really holding that together. And the more we can support collagen function, we're going to help support especially our skin. The second essential vitamin in daily wellness is vitamin D3, and we have it at 5 micrograms. I don't know how many of you have gotten used to the new labeling requirements in the US, but I'm still old school and I prefer international units. So there's going to be 200 international units in daily wellness. Now, vitamin D is a very interesting vitamin, and it's not working as a vitamin in the traditional sense of the word. Most vitamins that we consume are helping all the biochemistry and physiology and our metabolism really work and conduct all that chemistry that our cells need to do. Vitamin D isn't working in that same aspect. It's really working as a hormone. So working through various cell signaling pathways, it ultimately ends up triggering proteins that bind to our DNA and has been shown to regulate over 2,000 different genes. I mean, 2,000, that's a massive number of genes, and actually a significant percentage of the 30 to 40,000 different genes that we have inside of us. So many of those genes are directly related to an immune response and helping immune cells do what they need to do. And so as a result, it's helping to support both our innate and adaptive immune cells. We have zinc in daily wellness at a level of 10 milligrams. Remember how I showed SOD in that complicated biochemical slide? So our immune cells still possess DNA. They still possess the same genes. And so activation through our, especially Protandim NRF2 synergizer and activating SOD, for example, is also going to help promote antioxidant protection inside of those cells. For SOD, there's no fewer than 3 different general forms of SOD, and every one of those forms requires zinc for its antioxidant activity. So we're helping to support how, let's say, for example, Protandim NRF2 is working by making sure we have enough zinc around so that the enzyme SOD can work as efficiently as possible. And then zinc is also playing a role, again, like vitamin C, in cell division, differentiation, and also with that barrier function. So it's going to support our innate, adaptive, and also that barrier cell function. So those are the essential vitamins and minerals. Let's talk about the various nutritional aspects that are in daily wellness. So we have elderberry at 200 milligrams. This has been used for centuries to literally work on everything under the sun. And just to put it into very general terms, it's just supporting overall health and wellness. But how is it specifically supporting our immune system? So it's going to provide vitamins and minerals, right? These essential nutrients that even our immune cells need to grow, live, survive, thrive every single day. It's also providing a number of antioxidants, both direct and indirect antioxidants, as phytonutrients, as other compounds. But a very interesting one that I might encourage those that are interested to read more about is this class of phytonutrients known as anthocyanins. Anthocyanins are playing some very interesting roles in the immune system. And I think you'll be intrigued to learn more about them on your own time. How's that? Wink, wink. And then the last is really the hero ingredient of daily wellness. And that's this whole yeast ferment. And we have it in there at 500 milligrams. And it's important to note that this is an incredibly well-studied ingredient. In fact, there are 7 preclinical studies on this ingredient and 8 human clinical studies. And it's also important to note that that 500 milligrams is the clinical dose in those studies. And this whole yeast ferment is a very, very interesting extract. And the more I read about it, the more I fall in love with it. And the components of this whole yeast ferment are working in a number of different ways. So one is it's working nutrigenomically, and I'd say very similar to how we talk about Wellmune working in our ProBio. So we talk about how we're providing with Wellmune beta glucans. These beta glucans make it into circulation. They ultimately get metabolized, right? Used for food by a certain population of our immune cells. And then those metabolites, again, get excreted back into circulation. And these little metabolites can bind receptors on the outside of certain populations of immune cells that trigger this immune cell to come to a heightened and ready state. So it's not going to force it to do any activity, but it's bringing it to this heightened state. And the simple analogy I like to talk about, it's almost like there's 2 locks on the outside of an immune cell. And this priming mechanism is like unlocking the first lock, because is it quicker to have to unlock 1 lock or 2 locks? Well, of course it's 1 lock, right? So this priming mechanism is just, it's really intriguing to read about and just plays an essential role in a nice, healthy, normal, balanced immune response. But what is more interesting than this whole yeast ferment just providing beta glucans, it's actually acting more as what we call a postbiotic. So if you've ever seen my talk on the microbiome, I make you learn 3 definitions: prebiotics, probiotics, and postbiotics. So prebiotics, just to refresh really quickly in case you haven't seen it, prebiotics are nothing more than the food that our probiotics, or these healthy bacteria that live inside and on us, need to eat. Probiotics are the actual living organism. But then there's this other notion that's known as postbiotics. So what we can do, and there's a number of reasons why we would want to do it, but we'd want to grow up these healthy compounds, or these healthy organisms, let them feed on what their normal food would be. And let me take a step back. One reason probiotics are so healthy is because they're eating a lot of the food that our bodies can't digest. Okay, so these tend to be the fibers, right? Especially these insoluble fibers that we can't digest. So these probiotics are utilizing these as food. And it turns out it's the metabolites that these probiotics are excreting is just one reason why a healthy microbiome is so important for overall health. So what we can do is take these same healthy living organisms, let them feed on whatever their normal food source is, and then we can extract these metabolites back and give them back to people so that we're delivering these healthy compounds back to people. So when they go back in and they analyze these various metabolites from this yeast ferment, they see a whole breadth of different compounds there. They see different proteins, different polyphenols, right? Or phytonutrients, we can say. There's a number of vitamins and minerals that are there, amino acids, polysaccharides or complex carbohydrates. There is beta glucans, like I mentioned, and then also a number of fibers. And it turns out it's really this postbiotic ferment that is yielding the health benefits to our immune system. And so just a really simple way, and what you're going to see a lot of the marketing messaging coming out as is 5 to Thrive. So there's 5 ingredients in LifeVantage Daily Wellness. And so just the simple tagline we want everyone to remember is just 5 to thrive. That vitamin C, that vitamin D, the zinc, the elderberry, and that fermented yeast extract. Now, I know I might have taken a few liberties in kind of the beginning part of my talk, but I would like to encourage everybody that it's really important, especially in today's regulatory environment, that we stay incredibly compliant when we're talking about LifeVantage Daily Wellness. We know that the regulators are watching companies with immune products very, very closely to see what types of immune claims they are making. So please, please, please stay away from anything COVID related. Please, please, please stay away from anything virus related. And I think we don't even need to go down that route because of the ingredients that are in LifeVantage Daily Wellness. We can make some amazing claims with this product. And so these are the things that you can talk about. So it improves immune response. What else do you need to say? It boosts our body's response to stresses, mostly coming from the elderberry and that fermented yeast extract. It's going to support everyday health and well-being, supports respiratory and sinus health. Again, what else do you need to say? And then again, especially because of that postbiotic that comes as a result of that fermented yeast extract, we can say that it supports both a balanced guy and girl microbiome. Apologies, that's a typo. It should say gut microbiome. So it supports a balanced gut microbiome as well. And again, most of us know that somewhere between 70 to 80% of all of our immune cells are living directly inside of our gut. So there's that direct interaction with those healthy organisms that are living inside of our gut and our immune system. You know, I wanted to tell you all of that about your immune system, just to give you the confidence that, you know, we just didn't mix a few ingredients together, shake the bottle, keep our fingers crossed and make it work. But, you know, we do take a really diligent approach when we're formulating products. And that's just an example, and want to give you that confidence that that's what happened in this stage. So why are the ingredients so low? I'm not exactly sure what that's getting at exactly. And I think, I think there's a couple of reasons why people are saying that. I think one, if someone's going to the supermarket and maybe they're reaching for some of the competitors that are out there, you know, they'll see grams of vitamin C, they'll see massive doses of zinc that's in the product, and, you know, significantly higher doses most likely of vitamin D. But let's talk about especially those ingredients, because I think that's probably where the confusion may lie a little bit. Let's start with vitamin C, and maybe I'll share my screen. And the other point I want to make, the difference with the competitors that are on especially the supermarket shelves, those are meant to be taken when an individual feels that first sign of something coming on, maybe that little tickle in their throat. I think the brand team did an amazing job with naming this product with LifeVantage Daily Wellness. This isn't meant to be taken when you feel that little tickle in your throat. It's meant to be taken every single day to keep our immune system as healthy as possible, so that when it does meet a challenge, it's ready to jump on top of it. So that's point number one. And then let's work through the ingredients one by one. And I did have a slide ready just in case this question came up. So this is what a lot of, especially vitamin C researchers, consider to be the end all be all of vitamin C pharmacokinetics inside of our bloodstream. So what that means is, you know, how quickly do we absorb vitamin C, and then at what dose do we start to maximize concentrations? So what we have on the bottom here on the x-axis is the dose. Okay, so you can see the dose is increasing. And then here we have the concentration of vitamin C inside of the blood. So you can see at relatively low doses. So here we have zero milligrams. Here we have 10 milligrams. Here, this is a little bit of an old paper from 1996. Then the current RDA was 30 milligrams per day. So 0, 10, 30. Then we jump up to 100, 200, 500, 1 gram, and then 2.5 grams. So what happens here, you start to reach the deflection point between 100 and 200 milligrams of vitamin C. So somewhere right in this range is where you maximize your circulating levels of vitamin C. So literally, statistically speaking, you don't gain any more benefit by even taking 2.5 grams of vitamin C versus taking that 150 or so range. So when we're talking about ranges being so low, we're maximizing effectively your circulating levels of vitamin C. And currently, right now, the RDA for vitamin C is 60 milligrams if you're a woman and 90 milligrams if you're a man. So we're still at 2 times one, the RDA, and then also maximizing plasma concentrations or circulating blood concentrations of vitamin C. So I love where our dose is at. This also doesn't take into account the vitamin C you're going to be getting from your diet. And then a little bit of a theme you're going to hear is we also have a pretty exciting year this year as it relates to product launches. So we're also taking into consideration some of the other things we have in the pipeline and current things we already have in our product portfolio. The next one would be, let's come back up to the doses. The next one would be vitamin D. So yeah, 5 micrograms. If you've ever heard me talk, you know that I love vitamin D. Vitamin D is the #1 nutritional deficiency in the world. I think the current RDA of around 800 international units per day is still far too low from what people need to be taking. A couple of considerations for the dose of vitamin D that we have in this product. One, obviously maintenance dose, but then 2 is this was an international formula. So there was a conglomerate of countries that made it so that we had to keep 200 international units as the maximum dose that we could add to the product. But more than that, safety is another thing we wanted to take into consideration. So we also need to assume that many of you are going to be taking the majority of the products in our product portfolio. And so we have to keep safety in mind. And so as we're rolling out other products, you're going to see vitamin D sprinkled throughout the product line, and we are going to get people to a very efficacious dose of vitamin D. And the other reason that becomes important is as we start to bundle these products together in either stacks or various bundles, we also have to be cognizant of what a country's upper limit might be in that especially stack situation. So for example, in the United States, the upper limit is 4,000 international units. So if we were to offer some sort of stack, we couldn't go above that 4,000 international units. So as you can see, there's a lot of moving parts that came into deciding on that final dosage. And we did land on that 5 micrograms of vitamin D. And then the last one is zinc. And zinc is really, really interesting. The RDA for women is 8 milligrams, and for men, it's 11 milligrams. That has been shown to be a very efficacious dose to support your immune system. 1. 2, we have the same product line situation going on. So you're going to be seeing zinc in other places in the product line. But then zinc also has kind of an Achilles heel, and it's what we call this therapeutic window. So some nutrients have a really narrow therapeutic window, and others have a really broad therapeutic window. So what do I mean by therapeutic window? We obviously know on one end of a bell curve, right, none is bad. But we also know on the other end of the bell curve, too much can be equally bad. And you can literally throw everything in biology on these bell curves. I mean, you can put water on this bell curve. None is bad. You'll die from dehydration. But you can also die from drinking too much water. It throws your electrolyte balance out of whack, and you can die from a heart attack. So when it comes to zinc, we know that doses right around 10 milligrams is healthy. Again, this doesn't include what you're already getting from your diet. But if we go above 40 milligrams of zinc, it has the exact opposite effect on the immune system, 1, and 2, it can have a number of other negative consequences, especially as it comes to the transportation of other essential minerals inside of our body. So again, I hope that helps illustrate just how deliberate we were in the dosages that we chose.
Thanks for watching, and remember, one change can have an enormous effect. Remember to subscribe, hit the bell and the like, and we'll see you next time on Love to Live.